Part 5, Section 1, Chapter 8 of Short History of the Christian Church by John Fletcher Hurst. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 8, Political Framework of the Colonies. No uniformity in authority is perceptible in the first colonial organizations. Each arose out of the exigencies of the time. The caprice of the ruler, the necessity of the emigration because of suffering at home, and the favor of the leaders with the court and the people, were each a factor which determined the nature of the new government. The colonies, when once established in the New World, were simply a group of local governments, a cluster of diverse republics, each dependent more or less on the order of the government at home. But in all there was larger liberty than either the colonists or their rulers had anticipated. The Atlantic added new and deeper colors to the aspirations for freedom by giving scope and occasion to self-government. Freed from embarrassment by their distance from the Old World tyrannies, the colonists could set themselves to the task of government in the serious spirit of men placed by Providence at the beginning of a new venture in the history of the world. There were four varieties of colonial authority and government. One was the charter governments. This was the type of Massachusetts Bay, Rhode Island, and Connecticut. Plymouth, without the formality of charter, possessed the same authority. Large liberty was allowed, and larger liberty was taken than was granted. While there was a general accounting to the home government, these colonies had the power of assessing their own taxes, regulating their ecclesiastical system, and determining their colonial legislature. The governor had to account to England for his conduct, but the Assembly chose his council, and the Assembly was elected by popular suffrage. This large liberty to the popular will was the one fatal cause of dissolving the subjection of the provinces to England. It bred the Revolution and the Republic. The provincial and royal grants were the second form of authority. Here was the closest relation to the British crown. Both the governor and the council were appointed by the king. There were two houses of legislature, the council being the upper one. The lower house were elected by the people. New Hampshire, New Jersey, Virginia, the two Carolinas, and Georgia were under this form. The third were the proprietary grants. These were grants to the proprietors, who could appoint their own governor and convene the legislative body. But there was provision that no act should be done which would interfere with the original authority of the crown. Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Delaware were under this form. In appearance, this is the most liberal of all the forms of colonial government. But New England was so managed by the people and their governors that they took the most authority. The fourth class consisted of irregular colonies which had no royal authority whatsoever, but settled among others who did possess it. The Huguenots, the first Germans, the Salzburg emigrants, the Moravians, and the few Polish and Waldensian Protestants belonged to this class. They identified themselves with the interests of the colonists who received them and gave them hospitality. Religious liberty under these various forms was very diverse. Pennsylvania and Delaware had it in the fullest sense, and the later colony of Rhode Island made it one of her chief boasts. Discriminations were allowed, however, against the Catholics, even in Pennsylvania, and some time after 1688 Rhode Island passed a law disfranchising them. This law remained in force till the Revolution brought French soldiers and chaplains to the harbor of Newport. The Church of England was established in Virginia, Maryland, New Jersey, the Carolinas, and Georgia. But even here there were varieties of liberty. The Episcopalian establishment in Virginia was exceedingly tyrannical. No one but Episcopalian ministers was allowed to conduct service. When, on account of the shocking moral condition of the people, some New England ministers were sent for, they were immediately banished the colony. "Schismatical persons, either out of adverseness to the orthodox established religion, or out of the new-fangled conceits of their own heretical inventions, who should refuse to have their children baptized in contempt of the divine sacrament of baptism," should be fined 2,000 pounds of tobacco, half to go to the informer, and half to the parish. The attempts to suppress the Baptists and Quakers proceeded to great lengths of cruelty. In Georgia, however, where the benign plans of Oglethorpe were carried out, the spirit of toleration reigned. While in New York the Reformed Church was established by immigrants from Holland, under the auspices of the Dutch West India Company, as early as 1628 or earlier, there was but little freedom of conscience. After the English conquest of New Amsterdam, the English Church, by the Act of 1693, became virtually established by law, and it was with difficulty that even the Dutch Church could maintain her rights, while to the Presbyterian and all other churches no legal privilege was allowed. Of all the New England colonies, Rhode Island was the first to declare perfect religious toleration. This was due entirely to the leadership of Roger Williams. He was at first a Puritan, but, adopting Baptist and Independent views, he was outlawed, and but for timely escape would have been forcibly exported back to England. End of chapter 8.